please hit that subscribe button.
Hey everybody.
Better suited to win the Stanley Cup this season. If you are new to the channel, Washington Capitals, the Boston Bruins.
Locked on and he scored! And we're live. Hey everybody. So today I want to talk about 5 sleeper teams in the NHL who I think are going to be teams that you're really going to want to watch come playoff time and could make a serious splash in the postseason. And before we start the video, I just quickly want to remind everyone to please hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Both of those things greatly help out and are very much appreciated. So let's get into it here. When it comes to the Stanley Cup this season, we know who all the favorites are. We know who the top teams are, who everyone is talking about. The Pittsburgh, Washington, Tampa Bay, Boston, St. Louis, even Colorado. Those are the teams that are getting all of the attention and people are all talking about as potential Stanley Cup winners this year. But what about those teams that are flying under the radar who could really make a big splash and potentially, surprisingly, go much deeper into the playoffs than anyone expects? Similar to the way that Carolina did last year, where they came in as a wild card team. Everyone had them out in the first round playing against Washington, and the next thing you know, they're in the Eastern Conference Final. I do think there are some teams that could make moves like that this year once we get into the playoffs, and these are teams to watch. So, in no particular ranking order or anything like that, I want to talk about 5 of those teams. The first one being the Edmonton Oilers. Now, I know that might come as a surprise to some people. They haven't been into in the playoffs the past 2 years, but Edmonton this year, we know Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are playing at an unreal level. McDavid's out injured right now, but Edmonton's actually played pretty well without McDavid. They're maintaining their playoff position. They're actually in first place in the Pacific Division right now. Nobody really looks at them as a real threat going deep into the postseason, but I think that this is a team that if everything goes right for them, we could see them in the Western Conference Final, maybe even in the Stanley Cup Final. I mean, we look at, obviously they are led by McDavid and Draisaitl. Those guys are 2 elite offensive players who carry this team. But they are built for the postseason. They are a physical team with guys like Zach Kassian and Darnell Nurse and Jujhar Khaira. They have guys who can play rough and tumble big boy hockey that you need to be able to play in the playoffs. Edmonton has that. They have the scoring. They have the elite offensive talent. The only question I really have with the Edmonton Oilers is, do they have the defense/goaltending to go deep into the playoffs? I mean, we saw Mike Smith as their goaltender this year. He was with Calgary last season. He got absolutely lit up in the first round by the Colorado Avalanche last year. Can Mike Smith be a goaltender that leads this team deep into the playoffs? That's still a question mark in my mind. But maybe if he can play well, if this team does play well defensively, they're a team that could go really deep. They've got a lot of young guys on defense. It seems like every year defense is the issue with this Oilers team. Goaltending as well. That's the question every year. We know how good Draisaitl and McDavid are. It's can they keep the puck out of their own net? They've got a lot of young defensemen who have never played playoff hockey in the NHL before. It's going to be a question mark about them, but if those guys can play adequately, if they can get enough secondary scoring to go along with McDavid and Draisaitl, this could be a dangerous team without a doubt. And, we've seen what they've done the past few weeks. McDavid's out, Kassian suspended, Neal is out, Clefbaum's out. They've got all these injury issues / suspension issues in the case of Kassian, and they're still playing well. They're still maintaining a division lead. I like what I've seen from the Oilers, and this is a team that I've been very down on over the past couple of years. And I really like what I've seen from them this year. So Edmonton is definitely going to be a team to watch that could make a sneaky good run in the postseason this year if they get healthy and things start to go their way. Another team from the Pacific Division I think you really need to watch is the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, going into this season, I thought Vegas was a team that they were a team that I thought was going to be up there with the favorites, with the contenders like St. Louis, like Boston, like Tampa Bay, Washington, teams like that this year. And Vegas overall, I think, has had a pretty disappointing season. They're second in the Pacific with 70 points, but they haven't been that high level elite team that I think a lot of people really thought they were going to be this year. However, when they get into the playoffs, and it certainly looks like they're going to be a playoff team this year, watch out for this team in the playoffs. Marc-Andre Fleury, elite goaltender. You know you can win Stanley Cups with. He's done it before. He's been to a cup with Vegas. He's an elite goaltender that can take you deep into the playoffs. Elite top six forward group with William Karlsson, Paul Stastny, Jonathan Marchessault, Max Pacioretty, Mark Stone, Riley Smith. Elite top six forward group. Pretty good depth up front as well. A solid bottom six. The question and the issue all year for Vegas has been their defense. And is that defense core good enough for them to go deep into the playoffs with? Well, they just added Alec Martinez, a legit top four defenseman here before the trade deadline from LA, a guy who's a veteran player who's won Stanley Cups in LA, who's scored the game-winning goal in Stanley Cup games with LA. A serious playoff performer, a top four guy to help stabilize that defense. Vegas now, elite top six forward group, probably top five in the league as far as their first two lines go. Elite goaltender who's won Stanley Cups before. Just added to their defense core. When this team gets into the playoffs, watch out. They are going to be a very difficult out, and I think they're a team that is not getting talked a lot about right now, but could end up going very deep into the postseason this year. Still, obviously, could win the Pacific Division, could finish second or third in the Pacific Division. That whole division stacked right on top of each other still. Could be a wild card team, but when they get into the playoffs, watch out. Vegas is going to be a tough team to get out. Another team is the Dallas Stars. So when we talk about the Central Division, obviously everyone talks about the St. Louis Blues, defending Stanley Cup champions. They made the run last year, won the Cup last year. And the Colorado Avalanche are that young, up-and-coming, highly talented team with a lot of hype surrounding them. But people, don't forget about the Dallas Stars. The Dallas Stars right now are 2 points back of the division lead in the Central. They have a game in hand on St. Louis. And they're the best defensive team in the NHL this season. And that bodes very, very well for them come playoff time. Defense wins championships. You know, we see it year after year. The teams that do well in the playoffs, the teams that go deep into the playoffs are not the teams that score 5 or 6 goals a game and are running gun, high-flying teams. They are teams that keep the puck out of their own net, play defense, and can win those 2-1, 3-2 really close games. And that's what the Dallas Stars are. That is how that team plays. And when they get into the playoffs, they've got a great goaltender in Ben Bishop. Overall team defense is the best in the league so far this year. The question with them is going to be, can they score enough goals? Can they score enough and have enough offense to win games and go deep? But keeping the puck out of their own net is not going to be a problem. And if they find ways to score and can keep those games down at 2-1 or 3-2 and win those games, Dallas is going to be a team to watch come playoff time that maybe could ride a very good team defense all the way to the Stanley Cup final or at least to the Western Conference final. They're not going to be an easy team to get out, that's for sure. The question with them just is, can they score enough to go deep? And that, I think, we still, remains to be seen. But Dallas is a team that I will definitely have my eye on come playoff time. Switching over to the Eastern Conference now, there's 2 teams left I want to talk about from the East. One of them is the Philadelphia Flyers. So the Philadelphia Flyers have been really, really hot here as of late, playing great hockey. They've moved up into 3rd place in the Metropolitan Division. They're probably not going to catch Washington or Pittsburgh, but they'll either finish in 3rd in the Metro or in a wild card spot. But Philadelphia is a team that I think could be a big-time sleeper pick come playoff time. This is a team that's got a good mix of young talent as well as veteran players who have been there a long time, like Claude Giroux, like Jake Voracek. They've got a good influx of young guys like Ivan Provorov on the back end. Obviously, they're starting goaltender Carter Hart, very, very young. Travis Konechny having a breakout season this year. Sean Couturier, not veteran guy at this point, but not yet old. Has been huge for them this year. This Philadelphia team is a team that I think if they get hot at the right time and they win that first round series, we could see them deep into the postseason this year. They're built very well. They're obviously having a great season so far compared to what a disaster last season was. I think they've learned from what happened last season and now are taking things a little less for granted and are just playing a little bit harder. And they've looked really, really good this year. I've been really impressed with Philadelphia, particularly them post All-Star break this season. I think they've been outstanding. So Philly's another one of those teams in the East that I think could pull a deep run that maybe you don't expect it. Depending on who they play in the first round, if they get out of that first round matchup, watch out. They could be going deep. And the final team I want to talk about from the East, who did it last year and I think are perfectly capable of doing it again this year, are the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, Carolina right now is currently in the final wild card spot in the Eastern Conference with 72 points. They are behind the New York Islanders, behind Philadelphia in that Metro Division. They are slightly ahead, only on games in hand of Columbus. If Carolina gets into the playoffs, we saw them do it last year where they upset Washington in the first round and then went all the way to the Eastern Conference Final before losing to Boston. Carolina could do that again. They've made a few roster changes, but it is largely the same team. At least the core of this team is the same as last year. They gained all that experience with their run last season. They're a more experienced team now coming into the playoffs this year. This is a team that is not going to be an easy out. No matter who they play, I think they're going to be a very scary team to face in the first round. And again, it's largely going to depend on goaltending with them. Is their goaltending, is Peter Mrazek good enough? He got very hot last year in the second half of the season and into the playoffs, and they were able to carry that and ride him into a deep playoff run. Is Mrazek that good again this season? If he is, watch out for Carolina. They're a team that could make a serious run. They've done it already with largely this same group. So I think that they're a team that I certainly would not want to play if I'm one of the top teams in the East in the playoffs this year, because I think they're going to be a difficult out. So I'm not saying that any of these teams are guaranteed to make deep runs. That we could always have a year the opposite of last year where the favorites all win and the top teams all go deep and fight it out and we get a Stanley Cup final we expect. And that is certainly a possibility given last year we saw the exact opposite of that where all the wild card teams won, all the one seeds got knocked out. And we saw a lot of upsets last season. We don't know what's going to happen. When you get into the playoffs in the NHL, anyone can beat anyone. Anything can happen, and that's what makes it so great. So I'm not guaranteeing any of these teams go deep. Any of these teams are going to be Stanley Cup winners this year, surprisingly. I'm just saying that these are teams that I am watching very closely as sleepers in the playoffs who could really disrupt things, knock out some of those favorites that we've been talking about all year long at the top of the league, and could potentially make really deep runs either to the conference final or to the Stanley Cup final this year. They are definitely teams to keep an eye on and watch. But as we know with the playoffs, anything can happen. Anyone can beat anyone. And there is just nothing like playoff hockey. So with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.